Welcome to Second Table, where we discuss spirituality, philosophy, and psychology. I'm your host, Winston Janis. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Second Table podcast. Thanks for listening. Today, I am here with Anatta Campbell, who is the author of The Ordinary Buddha, Stories of Awakening. Thanks so much for being here, Anatta.
I'm so happy to see you and be in your company.
Yeah. So the way we kind of got into contact was through a mutual friend, Morgan Caraway. He's been a guest on my podcast, I think maybe 3 times now. So, I know we made a little connection there, and I heard about you. I heard about your book. I've been reading some of it, and it's very fascinating. It's a collection of stories of different people that you've met and interviewed, and it's like a different person is each different person is a chapter in the book, and you kind of talks about their own experiences of awakening and conversation with you. It was very, very fascinating read. How did you come to write such a book?
Because I had an experience like that I'm writing about. And it was so life-altering. And it was what I had been looking for many, many years. And, I have a big past with spiritual searching. And so finally found what I was looking for. And then I knew that this was happening to other people. And at the time, this was a long time ago now. It's been a while. But I wanted people to know, number one, that it's a fact that you can wake up to the truth of who you are. And also that it's not about that you don't have to be a big guru with a long beard and look a certain way and, behave a certain way, but it's for everybody. This is everybody's unique birthright. Okay, so I say unique, it's unique to each person, and it's exactly the same underlying self that we discover. So I wanted people to know, number one, that it's happening, and number two, that you don't have to be special, be anything other than what you are. It is already your nature to discover it. And so then I was just so interested in, now, how did other people find this? What was their path? What was their the most exciting thing for me is, what was the actual moment of discovery? What did that feel like to them? And then, where they came from and how it ended up. But
yeah, I mean, maybe you could, I'm not sure to what extent my listeners are familiar with these kind of concepts of awakening and enlightenment and that kind of thing. So, I mean, just to have an attitude, right, of beginner's mind, how would you describe or define what awakening is, or enlightenment? And maybe you can even talk a little bit about your own background and experience with that, that experience that you said you had yourself personally.
Mm-hmm. So I do, talk about that in the book because, this is not everybody knows. I didn't know about this until I met somebody who had something in his eyes. I thought, what's that? And then people said he was enlightened. And I said, oh, what's that? So it's just, I discovered myself. I didn't know that I was going for enlightenment. I just wanted to know what reality was. So to me, the experience of enlightenment is actually an experience to the personhood too. Even though people say, when you become enlightened, you're not a person anymore. You recognize who you really are, and the person, the ego self, is really not what you really are. So in that way, who is there to experience it? But in my experience, you do. You do. Your personality knows that it found something that it didn't know before. So it's the experience of recognizing the truth of who you have been all along, but you didn't know it. You didn't have the consciousness of it. You thought you were this personality. And in an awakening, in my experience, the personality just went aside, and there was this. I'm this. So it's not even, can't even really be named, but it can be experienced. So the this, when you wake up to it, shows you that it's the same for every single person, being, maybe even animals, I don't know. But it doesn't make you special, because it's exactly all of us. It's God, it's the divinity. It's finding your way to experiencing the divinity, or maybe you could call it a soul.
So it sounds like it's a shift of identity in the way we
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
what we identify with, or who we identify with, or what do we identify as, right?
Yes, and it's more than a shift of identity, though, because it's a knowing. It's a shift from thinking I'm this. And if you look close at yourself, like, how do you define yourself? You really can't grab it. You really can't know it exactly. You have a feeling of a self, but okay, I behave this way and I act this way and I think this way, but where is the self? You can't really find it. So when people, the thing that people do, spiritually seekers, is ask the question, who am I? That's not what I did, but that's the question. Who am I? So when you find out, then, so this, who you think you are, sets to the side, and you actually have knowledge and understanding and seeing and being the divinity that you are. It's an experience of the divinity. It's like, whoa, that's what I am. It's not a concept. So it's not an idea of, oh, I think I'll be more holy today or more divine, and then I won't go into my ego so much. It's a mind-blowing thing, literally. It blows your mind out, and you are sitting in thisness, just God.
Right. Yeah, that's
And
it.
you don't even, I don't even call it God either. It's beyond concept.
Right. So, yeah, it brings to an interesting, I think, an important question. I think probably a lot of people have. I know I've had this question of, right. It's like, Thich Nhat Hanh, I think, speaks to this a little bit, like, almost like a shift of identifying with, say, an individual wave in the ocean versus identifying as the ocean, right? So I feel like I understand that intellectually, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I get the concept that, okay, I'm identifying as maybe an individual wave, but the shift is to identify with, the ocean, the oneness of all creation, oneness with God and all beings and that kind of thing. So, but then, right, I think what you're talking about is not just, like you said, understanding the concept, but actually really somehow feeling and even knowing this as a truth in your experience.
Exactly.
So how do we kind of,
Well, I would say, okay, picture that you're the wave. You're experiencing yourself as a wave, and you're seeing yourself. Well, you look around, okay, I'm this wave. And then you just go, and you're the ocean now. The wave just drops and you're laying flat out, your ocean. You experience, I am ocean now. So it's not, oh, I could be ocean. I could see I'm part of ocean, but you're just, boom, you're ocean. You're just gone. You're in it. And then you notice that then when you have this experience, you look at all the other waves and you go, oh, they're ocean too. They haven't fallen into it yet.
So right, the gesture that you're making for those who can't see, right, is kind of like a falling into or a surrendering into, like falling back. So,
falling back. Like if you're in the ocean and you just let yourself fall right back into it and float as the ocean. I mean, you are the ocean. So
it is strange how it seems to go hand in hand with this surrender, this letting go of self, a self-surrender, one of the areas that I talk a lot about on my podcast that I'm passionate about, I don't know if you know, I'm now working as a Christian minister, right? And so one of my fascinations is like the parallels, like where this kind of East meets West, right? I just, because you find that within Christian language a lot, the idea of like surrender, like letting go, that Jesus kind of is portrayed in that way of surrendering, not my will, but the Father's will. And what's a more kind of in a way looks like a act of vulnerability and surrender than like being open on the cross, right? It reminds me of the gesture that you just made. And
it's funny because also it's going backwards. You're not moving forward with your mind. You're just falling back. Surrender is a huge word. I love your openness to all of this. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
because it is all the same. I'm also open to the saints. I was Catholic, and I love some of the saints and the things they say. I'm like, that's exactly it, from my experience. So my understanding of enlightenment is when I look at some of those saints and I see what they say, I go, oh, they woke up. And they say that in different words. Something happened. They changed. They became one with God.
Yeah, right. Like at one point, Jesus went out into the desert, right? And the myths say that, he fasted for 40 days and nights or whatever and was tempted and all that kind of thing. Do you think that perhaps Jesus had an awakening experience out there in the desert?
Jesus was awake, absolutely was awake. I don't know when he had it. That's a good possibility, but he was absolutely awake because he couldn't have said the things he said without knowing. So it's not, like I say, it's not concepts, it's knowing. And he's trying to share that.
Right.
He woke up and became one with God, the Son of God. He recognized that he is one with God. And that's what you recognize when you wake up. When you have an enlightenment experience, you recognize that you are God, that you're not separate from God. But I'm not any more God than you,
right.
That we're all just this little,
But it is interesting to think like that, once again, this problem of going, because I think by definition almost, it's somehow going beyond your mind, your conscious thinking ego. Not that is somehow lost in the mix or something, but that once again, this is not something that your mind figures out and then that's the realization. It's something that is experienced with another part of your being almost.
Exactly.
It's like a total knowing with your body and your spirit and everything. So, but the thing is, it's like we can't, it's the mind or whatever still wants to say, okay, what's the method for getting that, right? It's like we are in our culture very scientific minded, scientifically oriented. And, I remember Watts, who I like a lot, Alan Watts was saying, this is almost like just something that people get. I think he used the example of like measles or something. Like some people just get it, and
catch it.
Yeah, it's like, and he likened that to grace. The concept within Christian theology of grace. It's like it's a gift that is not necessarily earned, right? Or I feel like a lot of people describe it that way. That when they have this experience, that they didn't necessarily do anything to achieve it. It's like almost like all the practices that you hear that people do, like meditation practices, deep kind of ascetic sort of practices. Who was it? Tara Brach, I think, said these enlightenment is an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone, right?
Yeah, I love that.
So I don't know, but it seems as though the techniques themselves, according to some, aren't going to lead to this experience necessarily.
Nothing's going to lead to it, but those things do work. That's all I can say. Yeah. Those things do work. There are paths. But if you try to grab it, you push it away. It's like when you try to grab a ping pong ball in water, it just keeps going away. You can't grab it. So it's pushing it away, trying to grab it. But at the same time, a lot of people who've woken up have done a lot of things to try and get there. And in the end, they say, oh, nothing mattered. None of that made any difference.
I know. But why do they say that?
But because in the moment, the waking up doesn't have anything to do with, it's
right.
because people do wake up spontaneously also. So it
True.
is just a gift.
It does
So
seem like there's those
it's
stories
unique
of,
for every person, but I think if you want to look at a way to get there, there's two things that I see missing in people that I try and help find it and that don't quite get there. And number one is the real intense desire, like that's all I want in life. It's, that has to be premier, that has to be before everything.
hmm.
And not that you don't love your kids and take care of your job and do all of that, but it's a deep longing, a deep longing that doesn't involve getting awake so that you can show people that now I'm higher on the spiritual ladder. It doesn't give you more.
Yes,
So
and
you
at
have
the
to
same
you have to
time,
want it. You have to
mhm.
want it like purely. I have to know God, or for me, it was I have to know reality. I have to know what's real. I know I don't know. I just know I don't know. I don't know what's real. That was my question.
And yet
What's real?
the way that I've heard it described so often is that that in a way is the opposite of awakening, right? Because that a lot of people describe awakening as like you're not seeking anything anymore. You've sort of given
Yeah,
up the
but you
search.
have to seek it until you find it. Then you're not seeking anymore. Once you find it, you're done. So there's no more seeking. There's growth and there's things to do, but there's no. It's like, but to get it, you have to be sincere, very sincere, and deeply desirous of that. And the other thing is the surrender point, which I think those are two of the same things almost. It's like willing to give up anything. So in my experience, I had come to a point where I had done years of meditation, followed gurus, been to India, done everything, meditated all the time, in and out. I mean, I wasn't like a holy person. I would just play for months and then I start meditating for a while and then I do yoga and then this and that. But I had gurus, I had everything, and I followed them. And there was a pointing that would get me closer to a place. It just there's with different gurus, they would help me just get a sense of something. And like you say, it's not can't be intellectual, but you can kind of through the mind start to see that I could surrender or whatever. So one
Well,
of the things
yeah,
was one of the things was one of the gurus said, you are already that which you seek. That started it. You are already that which you seek. And then I was standing in my living room and I just thought, I am so frustrated and I cannot move until I know what's real. I'm not going to move. And my whole life just dropped away. I mean, I surrendered everything. Everything in my life just dropped away for a moment. And then if you can have that moment of everything just falling away, you are already that which you seek. And you
right.
just see it. It's taking this, oh, out of the way, and now I'm this. Now I see. It's really taking a veil away. So I realized later, I just knew, oh, like this thing came in, but no, it didn't come in. It was already there. The only thing I did was take the things out of the way that were blocking this knowing and being. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like this road is all full of paradoxes, like you're on this
Yes,
journey. There's no way to arrive at where you already are. It's like
that's right.
um yeah, it's a paradox because you're trying to get to
Anything
this
takes you
place.
away.
Yeah.
But that's why people talk about meditation, because it's like going in, just going in instead of going outward. So, but gurus have helped me. Outward things have helped me. Yoga has helped. I mean, all these things. I think the main thing to do is live a life that you enjoy. And if you have desiring, you want to experience it in God, I mean, I always felt like I was going for God. That's what my phrase, I'm going for God. That's what I live within a very ordinary life, nothing holy, but I was always going for God. So um, I think that you have to enjoy your life, though. You have to just be peaceful, do the right things, and maybe you'll get there. But surrendering your ego, it's like you don't have to let go of anything except who you think you are.
Yeah, I mean, right, it's like part of what I have thought is that like I've the way I think about meditation in a way, especially in our society in which we're constantly being overstimulated, it's like the only way to really appreciate the simplicity of listening to the birds sing or having a glass of wine or whatever it is, the simple pleasures of life is to get quiet. You know, it's like the more we kind of can return to that simplicity of being, just being, the thing that we've mostly been doing for, the thing we've been doing more than anything else throughout our evolutionary history is just being,
Mhm.
and that's the basic foundation. So to me, it's like, yeah, that's the benefit of things like meditation is um, just getting in touch with the fact, like I think, our society tells us there's so many things that we need in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled. And meditation, I think, teaches us, like Thich Nhat, like I said, reading Thich Nhat Hanh and stuff like that. And he's always talking about, like, he have these practices that he'll say, and, I can sweep the floor and be happy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's not something we probably say to ourselves very often.
And
Um,
it's only, whenever you're in the present moment, you're in presence. When you're really, really totally in the present moment and you're not thinking about something else, yeah, sweeping the floor is as wonderful as anything else. And that is a piece of awakening. That is the experience, and a little piece of awakening. If you're just fully present with your baby or a person or a tree or anything, being fully present is really, you're not there because you're in this experience. So my ego self, I'm not thinking about me, me, me. And mind is all me, me, me. So when mind is just quiet and you're just present, that's a taste of what it is to wake up to
right.
the fullness of your divinity.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. It's just this whole, like I said, that duality between getting the concept and then not necessarily feeling. I think people are right. They just get caught up in this idea of what it's supposed to be, rather than
Yeah,
allowing themselves to kind of just, like you said, enjoy ordinary existence to the
yeah.
degree that they can. But I guess that maybe leads into another question that I think a lot of people maybe have in the back of their minds, which I think at one point in the book, I can't remember who you were talking with, but and it's weird because it's, before I ask this question, it's like I do notice this pattern in a lot of the interviews. Maybe not universally, but with a lot of them, there is this, like, it connects with what we were talking about surrender. That people go through these intense experiences of fighting, contracting, struggling. Bryon Katie, she was kind of having like a mental breakdown, and so many others, I think, too, were going through those really difficult. Denise, right, in your book as well. She was sitting with her dying father,
Mm.
and kind of, it's like almost like somehow letting go into suffering, or suffering leads us to a place of letting go and surrender.
Often.
Right. And then the experience of awakening comes when we sort of, like you said, the wave collapses into the ocean, right? And it's
Yeah,
like the ego almost has to die. I mean, Bryon Katie, you said, she's like, I literally died, is what happened.
yeah,
The ego itself seems to go through this death experience where it's just not there for a relatively extended period of time. That happened to Eckhart Tolle, right?
yeah.
Um,
So for me also, I had that one experience I told you about, and then I saw everything. And then I had another experience a couple of months later, or sometime later, where I recognized that I never existed. I never will exist. And even though I think I do, I know it's not true because I had that knowing, very profound knowing. And then for 8 months, I was living in bliss. So that's like basically no mind, in the way that nothing troubled me.
So
So
what led to
the
that?
story went away. Yeah, I mean, that was like coming out of the first experience, I think, out of the desperate need to know, and then just saying, I literally said, I'm not going to move a foot. I'm not going to move a foot until I know. And the whole life dropped away. And then I saw my Buddhahood is what I saw. It was a vision of me, of a Buddha, and the thing went to the side. This thing went to the side. Then whenever it was, weeks later or something, I was talking to a friend, and I was talking about I'd been having a lot of psychic experiences. And I said, well, our other friend said, well, I said, why am I having these? And he said, because you're just giving out so much energy that it's just coming back. So I was explaining this on the phone at 11:30 at night. I'm just giving out so much energy. So the energy is coming back in, like in experiences of psychic stuff. And then I saw this energy, and I saw, that's all that I am. All of this stuff is all made up. It's a painting I painted, but this is what I am. And that was like, then I didn't even know if I was going to be able to function, because I'm only this. And the ego completely was seen not to go away. Like the first time it was sitting to the side, like I went, oh, that's not me, was still kind of hanging around. But this time it was seen as not existing, and never had it. It still doesn't. It's all made up, but this whole world is made up. It depends on who you talk to, and what level we're talking about. So I was just blissful for about 8 months. And then I went to see my family, and that's a good way of coming back down, because you want to give it to them, and they don't even understand you, and you can't give it to them. But living in bliss, I mean, just nothing could disturb me. So yeah.
Yeah. So what happened then?
Then I went to see my family. So now here's the good part. It was a honeymoon. It was like, yay, I'll take that again if I could get it. But the thing is that you can never go back and grab that experience again, because that's gone. So it's like you can't step in the river twice in the same place, because the river just is long gone. You can never go back. And people try, they feel like they got it and then they lost it. So they try to get it back. And you cannot grab it back. So what do you have to do? Move forward. So when you get an experience, I'm saying you stop seeking, which I did stop seeking after the first experience, but then the other one just came. That was just grace. Things are going to come, and if you're open, they're going to come. So I haven't had anything profound like that ever since, and it's been a long time. But what happened then was coming back down into the world and being this person in a more conscious way, now recognizing who I really, really am. But also, I'm also here on this planet. And I think when they talk about non-duality, that's the non-duality. Because if I'm here and I'm not here anymore, that's dual. Okay, I'm not that. I don't want to be that anymore, but I want to be only this, which is lovely, and that's a good place to be, but you're here on this planet for some purpose. Otherwise, why not just float around in the sky as an angel? I mean, if I have a body, I'm here, I connect with people, I have relationships. So then it came like full form, that's a prayer when I look at it now myself here. Yeah, the divinity and the earth, coming together, that's the oneness. And that's really where we're meant to be, I think, I feel and sense. So then I've come back and had all kinds of experiences, and recently just had this big relationship thing, and that's now past, but it was intense. It was me going into like high school behavior and stuff, and it's so much fun, but luckily in the background, I knew who I really was. And this is a play, and I'm gonna go through it, and I'm also gonna feel it as deeply as I feel it. And so coming back to being fully human, and like, I think what I read from other books and things is, why are we here? We're here to experience. We're here as a piece of God to experience things, to learn things and grow, and then bring that stuff back to the peace of God that we are. I don't know. Somehow it helps the planet or the universe. I don't know. It's learning and growing, but it's fun anyway. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun to be a human being. So, like, the angels are missing something because they can't touch each other. They can't cry or laugh, or I should say cry. But we can do it all. We can experience so much. So there's all the colors then come in.
Yeah, I mean, that perspective resonates with me. I think it's a good way to look at life. We might as well find joy in it, right? I mean, all the greatest spiritual teachers have taught us that we must find joy in our lives, and at the same time, I think this is, sort of one of the questions that comes up always. It's always has to do with suffering, right? It's like, I think
Yeah.
at one point in your book, you said, when we have this kind of experience, there's a joy that is not at all dependent on what life gives us. It's from
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
But I think people have questions about that because life contains quite a bit of suffering, and so what does that really mean if there's a joy that somehow, it's easy to imagine that, not that this maybe happens all that often, or maybe it does, where people get into situations where life has a great deal of suffering in it, that seems to almost obscure that joy you can imagine. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it does. And I just recently been through that. So it was this relationship thing. It was incredibly wonderful on one hand and really, really, really hard on the other hand. And there was a lot of suffering and I was very miserable. But there is a little piece that knows what's underneath that. It's still mind. And I know that beyond mind, there is this divinity that I am. I know there's this peace and love and yeah, it can really totally obscure it. And so you hope that you can remember that experience and use it as a, knowing that's there. That's there. I'm just doing this now. There, Byron Katie says things come to pass, not to stay. Everything comes to pass, not to stay. Good things, bad things, everything. So knowing that, and I have a new psychologist lady that I talk to once a week now, because I have a mind still, and I need that help. So no, it's like waking up doesn't give you perpetual non-suffering life. It just doesn't. So, but it's like now I feel like, oh, good, that was so rich. All of that experience is 3 years now. It's so rich, and I went through a lot. And wow, I mean, you find out things about yourself. It's a huge learning. And now I feel, I'm back. Hello, I feel like I'm back to myself and to but I
Mm.
had it all along though, because if I would just lie in the suffering, lay down and shut my eyes and just breathe and be in it, there's something beautiful there too. There's something beautiful in the depths of suffering. Just if you go into it, like I said, in presence, whenever you're really fully present, even in suffering, there's something that just like, oh, it's just like it's a peacefulness even.
It's strange, the paradox, where like these perceived negative emotions and experiences actually add a kind of depth to life. It's
Yeah,
like I remember the kids movie. I have three young kids, so I watch a lot of kids movies, which are very wholesome, and it's a nice kind
I
of thing.
like
It's like,
them.
why don't we
You're lucky.
adult movies,
Yeah.
aren't usually very wholesome. So, but Inside Out, there's a movie where there are these characters that the emotions of this little girl,
Yeah, I
and
saw
towards the
that.
end, it's like the sadness and joy get integrated. And
Yes. Yay.
yeah, yeah, it's like I just think about how, on the one hand, I think no one should ever have to go through the kind of suffering that we sometimes find in life. It just shouldn't happen. uh, and
And
at
that's
the
where you suffer when you
yeah,
argue with anything. That's
yeah,
the suffering. When you think anything shouldn't be there and you think your suffering shouldn't be there. And, so over this time, like I'm saying, the last 3 years, when I was in suffering, when I was in bliss, I was in bliss. But when I was in suffering, I didn't think it shouldn't be here, even though I didn't like it. It doesn't mean I liked it or I wanted it, but I never argued with God. That's the thing. Byron Katie says, and I'm glad you mentioned her. She's a good one. Byron Katie says, if you argue with God, you always lose. Haven't you noticed? It's like, oh, yeah, I have noticed. So
yeah,
anytime I argue, so if I'm in suffering, I'm really like feeling horrible. And I think, oh my God, this shouldn't be here. Why me? I shouldn't have this. But I go, oh yeah, I should. It's a lesson. It sucks. It feels terrible, but I'm in this. And then, like I say, just being fully in it, it helps you almost transmute it into something else. But it's our judgment that it's things that should and shouldn't be.
mm,
It's our labeling.
yeah, and
If we
yet,
just don't label, just experience, it's not that bad.
yeah, I see what you're saying, and yet, like, I just have to say, like, I think within like the Jewish and Christian traditions, there is almost this tradition of arguing with God, believe it or not, right? And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
but in a way, I see that as it's like we have to allow sometimes room for that as
Yeah.
part of our humanity to
Yeah.
kind of scream at God,
Yeah.
and all that as well. I mean, I see what you're saying though. It's like a
I kind of like that. That feels freeing just to hear that.
yeah, like there's a time and a place for it. There's a time and a
Yeah.
place to like
Yeah.
Jesus and
Oh,
Mary,
yell and scream and be mad and yeah,
right?
let your feelings out, your emotions out.
And there's a time to say, yeah, all this resistance and screaming is only causing me suffering, and it's time to
I
surrender.
almost think that screaming is not resistance because resistance is kind of a silent thing, like, oh, just make just go away. But if you just scream, you're actually creating some openness and some avenue
Right.
for release. So I think that screaming, I remember being in India with a guru and throwing pillows at him and just screaming at him for making me come there because I left my kids and I missed my kids for a while. And I was so mad at the guru because I felt pulled I had to go. I mean, and I did. As I look back on my life, that was perfect. But I know what it is to be mad at the God,
Mm,
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's human, like you say, and to be human, to be fully human. But just to have an understanding. So the thing about what is awakening is the understanding that everything is as it should be, I think is part of awakening. And then looking at that in your life and seeing it unfold, everything is as it should be. Like, oh, well, if this terrible thing didn't happen, this good thing wouldn't happen. And you look out over your life and you can kind of see that. So I think
yeah.
knowing that everything is as it should be is a big one to live by.
Yeah, it's like
And you
I
don't have
think
to like it. You
you
don't have to
know,
like it.
yeah, I don't want to wish suffering on anyone at all. And it's
No, of
like
course not.
and
But you
yeah,
could wish that they would be knowing that this too will pass and that okay, they can scream about it. You don't want anybody to suffer, but you don't want them to suffer more because they think it shouldn't happen. Like, what did I do wrong to make this happen? This terrible thing. Rather than just saying, okay, let me just breathe with it and let's move on.
right. And
Fighting
it does seem to add like a depth to, once again, like it seems like a paper cut, like recovering from
yeah,
that isn't much, but when you see like somebody recover from a serious accident or whatever, it's like it's moving. It's profound. It's when you see the things that people are capable of overcoming. It's like the depth of the suffering. When people bounce back from that, or somehow find a way through that, it's like a testimony to the depth and the power and the profoundness of, you know, the thing that's greater than the suffering, you know,
Yeah.
who we really are, or God, or soul, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, source, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always inspiring. And, I think the thing that was fun about writing the book was interviewing all these people, to look at where they came from and to look at what happened and to look at where they wound up. So they all wound up in a place where, and talking to them later, they say, oh, you should see what else happened though. More stuff happened, more difficulties and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all going to God. I mean, when you come out of that and you come into something beautiful again, that healing, that's God, that's love, that's what it is to, be on a spiritual path as well.
Yeah.
And spiritual is, it's almost like so overdone these days that it's become like a fad. To want to be enlightened is a fad, and that's annoying to me a little bit. It's sort of like, yeah, it's more than that. It's like you have to actually go somewhere in yourself. You have to actually look inside. You have to get real. And it's not something you can put on your head, now put a pretty little hat on, now I'm awake, it's you have to go into your guts and look inside, look deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not trivial. Feels like it's been trivialized. But
right. Anyone can claim it, right?
Anyone can claim it, yeah. But also in the book, I interviewed people who actually had an awakening and then knew they had an awakening and they were clear about it. So what I say in the book is like, if you are in love with somebody, you're the only one who could say I'm in love. Nobody can tell that from the outside. You know it. And you could lie and say I'm in love and you're not, but to be in love, everybody knows what that feels like. So to be awake is a kind of like, it's a knowing, a self-knowing.
So one of the things I kind of also wanted to ask you about before we run out of time is I understand that, you kind of were, I guess, a student under Osho at one point. I guess, I don't know how you describe it, or a disciple, or, I came across, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. There's a documentary, I think it's called
I'm in it.
Wild Country, right?
I'm the one who's carrying a ladder saying, "Hi, Mom."
Oh, really?
That's me.
Oh, I only saw it once through. I don't know if I remember that part, but it was a pretty mind-blowing documentary, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just curious to ask you a little bit about your experience with that. Yeah, I don't know. It might be maybe a long story, but how long were you part of that community?
I would say I'm still part of that community.
Oh, okay.
Osho is still in me, and he's the one who showed me what it was to be awake, which I wasn't interested in before this. But he was also the one who showed me how to celebrate life in every form, in every way. Celebrate everything, he said, everything. Like when I got fired from work one time, and my daughter got kicked out of school, I said, okay, let's go celebrate. And we went out to dinner. I mean, that was from him. It's like, just be fully alive. He's that kind of master. I think he was my spiritual master. I've had teachers, but he was the master. So, of course, very controversial, and there's all of that. But
yeah, I mean, for those of the listeners maybe who have
Yeah.
not heard of Osho or who that
Yeah.
is, I mean, would you want to maybe describe a little bit about who would you say Osho is or was?
He's a crazy spiritual master from India who was fully enlightened, who was also human. And towards the end of his life, he got a little even crazier, but he woke up so many people. I mean, woke up maybe not fully to enlightenment, but woke them up to life. So this is what it is to live and celebrate and just be happy. And a very freeing. I was just reading today a Tantra book by him. Tantra being not about sex, but about everything being natural and wholesome. Like there's not, not to make this bad and that good, but to just live in life and flow in a natural way, in your heart. if without the conditioning, you're pretty free and open and loving. So yeah, very controversial, but I lived on the ranch and I was in that video, one of them. I'm saying hi to my mom, and she saw it how many years later, so many years later, recently, she just passed away. And she
Oh,
saw
I'm
me say,
sorry.
hi, Mom, across the miles and across time, because she saw that little piece.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think that was something. Across the miles and across time, she got to see she died. But we lived in a community that was, you know, contradictory, because it was incredibly beautiful. Everybody had a job. Everybody took care of each other. You did your job, and then you came back and your bed was made for you, and clothes were folded on your bed that they had washed, and dinner was there because somebody had that job. It was the only time I'd lived communally, and it was incredibly beautiful. But you were all there out of this love of seeking God, not of the master. The master was pointing you to the moon, and he would say, don't get stuck on the finger. I'm pointing you to the moon. So we were all there, love for him, for being the pointer, but trying and looking and trying to find where we were with God in ourselves. So it was a very beautiful thing. And the people around there were very frightened that here come all these people. We were wearing orange. We looked different. We were laughing all the time. They thought we were all on drugs. And there were, I mean, some of the top people were on drugs, but we weren't allowed. There were not allowed drugs in there. It was a pure joy of life. I mean, and I have that in me now. So, I mean, I can go back to that. So it's like, it was just a pure gift. And the people who were terrified of it, you know, then they tried to do everything they could to stop us. And then people tried to stop them from stopping us. And we were creating a real, oh my gosh, it was a real paradise there in the mountains. You know, I mean, it would snow one day and the next day be 80 degrees. It was in like high desert. So paradise, not like you're laying on a beach, but, you know, just the joy of it and what we created to change the whole environment. And then there were some people that really lost it and were real criminals and were doing terrible things in the name of Osho. So that also happened. But the people who were
Yeah.
there who lived it, we all felt like, wow, we were so lucky.
Mm.
And it turned out really weird in the end, but we were blessed to have a piece of.
One of the things that fascinates me, it's part of the reason I'm in ministry as a pastor, is creating community, right? I just feel as though, you know, we're meant to be in community, and that really that is missing to a large extent in today's society, especially
Yeah.
in our culture, where we're all kind of like, you know, sucked into our phones and our TVs at night, and I don't think we really experience the intimacy of true community. And so, you know, a story like the one of, you know, what was it called? Rajneeshpuram was the
Yeah.
town or
Yeah.
whatever, the community. And
Yeah.
that all fascinates me, those kind of intentional
Yeah.
communities. And yet it
Yeah.
seems like whenever you have human beings in the mix, the thing
It
is
becomes a
not,
mess.
it's not going to last, is it?
You know what? I was very, very upset about the ending. I was in mourning. And then for a couple of months, and then I read that Osho said after the whole thing ended, he said, just because you have something incredibly beautiful doesn't mean it's not going to change. Change is life. Everything in life changes. And so just because you think it's great, it's, oh, well, it's still going to change. So
Right.
then in this, you know, fast, I just dropped the mourning and I went, oh, okay. Because I thought it should be different. That was before I woke up.
Yeah,
I thought
right.
it should be different. And it wasn't different, but everything changes. So he was a great master. And people who read his books without, you know, just judging from the stuff you hear about him and stuff, the sensationalized stuff, read his early books especially. They're wonderful. They really speak to truth.
Interesting.
Yeah, so community it's hard, and I like being on my own. But you know, it's hard with people who are in my kind of spiritual zone of sort of non-duality and more Eastern, because I don't want to join another group. That's not it for me. And at the same time, you know, how do you have community? I see the great value in that, you know, with churches and the families coming together and all of that. So
Yeah.
what we do is that we kind of find each other here and there. And I wish I could have a place that would just feel clean enough. It's like, that's the tricky part, without too much ego, you know, where people just want to come together to be together.
Right. Yeah, we need that as human beings, you know, and so, you know, we all have to find our people in some way, shape, or form. And yet, right, the communities don't last. They only last as long as we do, if that. And oftentimes not even that. Yeah.
Well, I love that you're so open. I mean, I feel like you're in my community as well, because, you know, your heart is there in the same, it's the same. It doesn't have to have this label or that label. It's really, like I say, going for God and going for love and going for love of each other. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much we can explore with this. It's all very fascinating in this day and world. But yeah, I mean, I thank you for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
And if people want to read the book, it's available from Amazon. It's a Kindle book. You can get it on your phone or on the computer or Kindle or whatever. It's The Ordinary Buddha. I don't make a penny on it because it just kind of, that part just disappeared. I don't know where that went, but I would love people to look at it. If you're interested in stories, I like stories. I think we like stories as human beings. That's why Jesus talked in parables and stories, and Osho talks in stories. But the stories of people who actually woke up and what that is for them. There's also some information in there about Osho and about Papaji, who I also spent time with in India, and some other people. And Adyashanti, who's a very well-known non-duality teacher, and Bryon Katie are in the book too, interviewed personally by me. So in the earlier days, when you could get to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting book, and I hope people would get something from it. That's why I wrote it, so that people could get a taste of what it is that the book is talking about.
Yeah, I've been enjoying the stories, you know. Those stories are very fascinating, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
I will include a link to the book and the
Okay.
notes for this episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Yeah, been a pleasure talking with you, Anatta. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
I'd love to. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bryon Katie thought this meant no mistake. She had no history in religion. She thought this meant, when people say namaste, she thought they're saying no mistake. And I think that's exactly what it's saying.
Very
All righty.
good.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.